So today we're going to be talking about Freud, Jung, Adler, and James. This is Team B. My name is Travis Prouty, and I have Tom with us.
Hello there.
Understanding the brain. Psychology is one of the most sought after professions, it seems. Over the years, there have been lots and lots of people trying to understand and create theories and understanding of how the brain works, why we work, what different personalities are formed from, how they handle. And there's been a lot of great and influential psychologists, but four of the most influential psychologists we're going to talk about today. And we're going to give a brief summary of their positions and the clear differences and similarities in their theories and their beliefs. The four influential psychologists we'll be speaking about are Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and William James. First up is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was alive from 1856 to 1939. He's possibly the most famous psychologist ever. He created psychoanalysis, which simply is the clinical method for treating psychopathology. Essentially, when people are having issues or neurosis or different issues in their brain and they're unstable and they're not functioning properly, he created the scientific or clinical method, his theory for how to understand these brains and how they work. He had a lot of very unique perspectives that had never been seen before. Essentially, everything around Sigmund Freud's belief was based on sex and libido. He believed that everything from childhood, from dreams, from our entire life, was sectioned around sex and libido, and that's what drove us to our personalities and our behavior. He also coined the Oedipus complex, which essentially was the daughter always wants the dad and the son always wants the mom. It's a sexual thought where we aspire and desire for the opposite sex, and that leads us. He also came up with the life and death drives. The life drive being our thought is to live long and healthy and productive lives, so we steer ourselves away from harm's way. We live a normal, safe path. The other extreme is the death drive. Part of our personality requires us to reach across and do things that are daring and challenging to create fear, to stimulate us. And a lot of those things are, again, sexually driven. Sigmund Freud was one of the most influential psychologists, and he was also a leader. One of the first people he worked with was the next psychologist we're going to talk about, Carl Jung. Carl was alive from 1875 to 1961. He founded the analytic psychology school, which was a brain tree and a branch off, rather, of Sigmund Freud's work. They worked together for about 6 years, and after some time together, Carl Jung decided that Sigmund Freud had made his opinions and he wasn't going to deviate from them. He didn't like the new thoughts or the new concepts. So there was a split, and their friendship ended, and Carl Jung started his own school of thought, which was a little bit different. Essentially, he believed in individualism. His thought is in meaningful life. Everybody's goal in life, predetermined, is to live a meaningful life through self-awareness, transformation, and self-actualization. He believed in two different types of consciousness, the collective and the individual in consciousness. Essentially, one of the things that he was really intrigued about, and one of the varying things from Sigmund Freud, is the unconscious. He doesn't believe that you can study clinically or in any other way the unconscious, because the unconscious is exactly that. It's unconscious. It can't be studied and analyzed any kind of clinical way. He believes that every single person is an individual, and within their two consciousness, the individual consciousness is our brain, unconsciousness rather, is our brain taking individual parts of our life and piecing them together in our unconscious. The collective, he thinks that every species have a similar unconscious memory bank, essentially a place where things are laid out, so that humans all have a similar unconsciousness that are designed similarly. Next up is Alfred Adler, who was alive from 1870 to 1937. He founded the individual psychology. Essentially, his belief is you can't study people and decide what they need. The individual will decide what they need best. They know their own self better than anybody. So individual needs or psychology needs to be determined on an individual basis. And that food for thought that he's given to the world has maintained true in a lot of psychology today. A lot of counselors and things like that work with that same process and that same understanding. He also believed that there's external factors that determine our personality, that we don't control who we are. He phrased them differently, but essentially society, love, and work, our vocation, our love, hate, and society, which are all external factors, affect our personality, and we don't have control of that. He thinks when challenges come to individuals, we have three different ways of coping with the challenges. First is compensation. Essentially, compensation, we're trying to overcome the negativity or the challenges, and we compensate by making up, and those are usually the successful people in life. Resignation is we look at our challenges in life and our disadvantages, and we just accept them as they are what they are. He believes that most people have resignation, and we just accept how life is as what it is, and we'll just get through it without any ups or downs. And then overcompensation is the third way of handling reluctance. Overcompensation, like compensation, these are people who are working really hard to get over their disadvantages, but tend to overcompensate, and that leads to narcissism. And that's the similar substance of Alfred Adler's positions. And the last great psychologist we're going to talk about is William James. William James was alive from 1842 to 1910. His main contribution that everybody's familiar with is pragmatism. Essentially, his thought, when we're looking at our brains and what thought is for, he thinks that thought is for problem solving, not describing. Essentially, a lot of psychologists prior to his time thought that the reason we think things out and the way our brains work is to replay events, tell stories, remember what happened, mimic things, and essentially live in a repetitive life. His thought was that's not the case. The reason that we have thoughts and the way our brain works is specifically for expanding and creating new resolutions and growing. He's known as the father of American psychology. He is one of the first, he actually taught the first psychology class in America, and really was on the forefront of all American psychologists. And the last major contribution he had was he suggested that personality evolution. Obviously, with Darwin and others, there's the theory of evolution that our bodies have changed and continued to grow and evolve with the times and what we need to make sure that we can be stronger and survive. And the thought is that personality also had to evolve, that it just simply doesn't make sense to think only our bodies and our key components have evolved, that also our personality. So these four had some very different perspectives, and Tom is going to talk a little bit more about the disagreement and the similarities.
All right, we're going to get into compare and contrast with theoretical works. We're going to start off with conscious and unconscious. This is the big battle here is between Freud and William James, and Adler errs on the side of James, and Jung errs on the side of Freud, so they kind of just get paired up in that way. But Freud believed that we could tap into the unconscious, along with Carl Jung, who got really big into dream analysis and kind of paved the path there. But William James, on the other hand, believed that that the unconscious cannot be sought into, and that for mental health or mental life, the person in question has to look into themselves, introspection. And Alfred Adler believed that in the same way. As for sexual motivation, this one goes down to Jung and Adler for the most part, and those two being predecessors, or we'll just go with predecessors of Freudian psychology. They broke off and kind of developed their own path. I'm lost for words right now.
So, with that information, we have a good understanding of our psychologists, of the four greatest psychologists, and that concludes our presentation. We hope it was informative. Thank you.
Yeah, just space there.